Started. My name is Alaina Campbell. I'm president of the Rochester Regional Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is our first in what we have scheduled right now is a 4-part series, though we'll extend it if needed, which it may need to be extended because it sounds like there are going to be continuing changes. So we want to make sure that we're bringing you the latest information, the most up-to-date information, and that we're connecting you with the valuable resources that you need so that you can reopen your business in safe mode. I want to thank our presenting partners for this 4-week series, Lambert Law. Brad Lambert is with us, and you will hear from him later on in this webinar. And our other presenting partner is Matthew Vizana and CCS Presentation Systems. And you will also hear from Matthew in a little bit during our presentation. So we really appreciate their sponsorship of this webinar series so that we can bring you this information. Our guest speaker today is going to be Sue Keels, General Manager at the Royal Park Hotel, and myself as a small business owner as well. We're going to share with you some of the things that the perspective from the large business, the Royal Park Hotel, and then the perspective from a very small business, a seasonal ice cream shop. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. First of all, this is being recorded, so the recording will be made available. So if you hear from anyone who wasn't able to participate at this time, that recording will be made available to all of our members and posted on our website as well. If you have a question, what we would ask is that you please type it in the comments box or type your name in the comments box, and then I will unmute you so that you can ask your question during the Q&A portion. I do ask that everyone, except for the speaker, please make sure that you are on mute at this time. It just makes it a lot easier for everyone to be able to hear. I did want to make a couple of announcements on some things that we have coming up that are pretty exciting and fun. Our team has been working really hard, switching over, of course, to virtual events, just like everyone else has. And we're excited about some of the things we have coming up. Tomorrow will be our weekly update with our local elected officials. We started doing this the very first week of our Stay Home, Stay Safe order. So tomorrow will be sponsored by Bellbrook. And we're very excited that we're going to have an opportunity to hear from Libby Delaney, who is the executive director at Bellbrook, who will give us an update on how things are going there and you know how they're working with the senior population in their facility, and of course around the community. Libby is also a member of our board of directors, so we really appreciate her service to the chamber and our community as a whole. Our young professionals will meet tomorrow morning virtually. They are sponsored by Oakland University, and they're going to hear from Jerry Yurgo, owner of Nothing Bundt Cakes, who's going to talk about some of the changes that they've made to their business model to address the issues that we're dealing with right now with COVID-19. Tomorrow night, we have Wind Down Wednesday, virtually, of course. Very fun, and we're excited that we're going to play DJ Bingo. So Maggie Bobbitz, our vice president, has worked really hard at setting this up, and we thought it would be really fun to do something a little bit different than just all be in these squares on a Zoom call. So we're going to play DJ Bingo, and that's sponsored by 7 South Technology Consulting. So we're excited about that. This Thursday will be our weekly Small Business Town Hall brought to you by the Oakland Chamber Network. The Oakland Chamber Network consists of all 28 chambers here in Oakland County. We meet and get together quarterly to share ideas and collaborate with each other and work together. And on that call on Thursday, our featured speaker is going to be the Vice President of Communications and Marketing for the Michigan Retailers Association. And she's going to talk about the logistics of reopening a retail store, ideas on how you can reconfigure your store, manage your employees, deal with vendors, and reach out to your customers. So we're excited to hear from the Michigan Retailers Association on Thursday during that call. We also have on Thursday our Member Orientation 201, sponsored by Sinclair Wealth Management. This is critical as we are now all looking at how we can be more effective with our online presence, more important than ever. And during this session, we teach you how to utilize the Member Information Center through the Chamber and through our website. We teach you how you can make your listing in our member directory look more robust with pictures and video and descriptions about what you offer, linked to your website. You can post events to our events calendar that is available for the public or anyone to view on our website. You can post job postings through the Member Information Center, and you can post news releases that scroll on the homepage of our website. And those news releases are then used to populate our weekly newsletter that we send out. So it's really important to learn all of those things, especially with what we need to do today in this digital age. And my phone is ringing. We also have Coffee Talk this Friday. It's sponsored by First State Bank and American House, and we're always excited to get together with all of you during our Coffee Talk, which has been very well attended the last two, even despite everything that's going on. The virtual Coffee Talks have been really popular, so we're excited about that. Then next Tuesday, May 19th, will be the second edition of this webinar series, Rebooting Your Business in Safe Mode. And then Tuesday afternoon, we're going to hear from Team Core, who will conduct a webinar focused on the commercial real estate market and addressing key topics for tenants, which I know has been at top of mind for many people and owners of commercial real estate properties. So we're excited to hear from Team Core. So at this point, we're going to start our presentations today, and I'm really excited to introduce our guest speaker, Sue Keels, the General Manager of the Royal Park Hotel. Sue, as many of you know Sue, she's very involved locally and has been for a very long time. We all know the Royal Park Hotel, of course, very well, an absolute jewel that we have here in our community, and leaders here in our community that are so integral to everything that we do. Jason Rewald serves on our board of directors, which we were really excited to have him join us this year on our board. And everyone knows Frank Rewald and the Rewald family, owners of the Royal Park Hotel. So Sue, you're just amazing. And we're so excited that we were able to join us today. She's going to talk about their approach to reopening the Royal Park Hotel. So take it away, Sue.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. And hello, everyone. What a journey we have all been on over the past 8 weeks. It changes, as probably everybody has experienced, daily, weekly, monthly. So we're excited. We are getting ready to have our soft opening on May 18th. And we as a business are taking it in phases. So 8 weeks ago, we started our phase 1 approach, and that was recovery, research, education, retraining everybody on safety and sanitation, and investing in a lot of new tools. So we would be ready for May 18th. And we'll take a soft approach. You know, our restaurant is obviously not open. We're going to work on the carryouts. We're opening up our guest rooms. We're completely sanitizing our guest rooms. We've purchased, we've actually partnered with Clorox and also Procter & Gamble. They've been partners of ours for years, but Clorox has an interesting machine that we have invested in. It's called the Clorox 360, and it literally sanitizes 99.9% and has a fogging element to it as well, and it works on very hard surfaces. So you'll see us throughout the hotel with this machine. It arrives in the next couple of weeks. We will be out and about. And we also feel like on top of that, it's important to have the old-fashioned wiping as soon as people walk in. So we're doing a lot of that. We're also incorporating foot pedals to a lot of our bathroom doors, so it will be touchless. We feel that's something that is cost-effective if you look into it, and if you need additional information, let me know. I'm happy to share. So we're also training. It's changing behavior, right? So how do you do that when you start bringing back phase 1 and all of these new employees? So we are kicking off an orientation this Thursday, and we have organized a long list of certification, safety and certification tools. And we will be training everybody on behavioral changes, wiping down, washing hands, making sure that they're cleaning their masks that they are going to wear, that they are armed with the proper PPE. All of this is very different. So I would encourage everybody to make sure that you start your training now prior to opening, and it's ongoing, and it's literally every shift. We're going to have stand-ups every shift and talk about it and bring awareness. There will be thermometers available and temperature checks, which we feel is important as well. So there's it's science, it's medical, it's safety and sanitation all wrapped into one. So we'll be ready. We feel very confident in our leaders. We've been doing a lot of these practices for years, you know, being in the hospitality industry. So it's just taking it to the next level. And we talked about just making sure that as businesses, you amplify prior to opening and talk about what you're doing. I think that is critical. So yeah, making sure that you're getting out your plans on social media, making sure that you're sharing all of that information on your website, and talking to your guests and your employees, and ensuring that everybody's providing a safe and sanitized environment. So we're ready. We're looking forward to phase 1. Then we will move into phase 2 based on, you know, the mandates. And we're hoping to get about 25% occupancy in our restaurant. And what does that look like? We already have a plan in place. We are taking everything off the tables. We will sanitize tables prior to guest arrival and when they leave. We have positioned our tables from a social distancing perspective 6 feet away from each other, and we will be using all of our sprawling space. We feel like our outdoor space will be really beneficial and make people feel comfortable. So those are a lot of measures that we are taking in the restaurant. We're not going to have cloth napkins anymore. We're going to look at a little bit more of a grab and go opportunity. Also paper menus, our beautiful menus that we invested in, they're going away. And that's okay. We want people to feel very comfortable. So all of those measures it's the devil is in the details. And we feel like that is critical in, you know, the next steps to opening. And phase 1, phase 2, and then phase 3, we will sprinkle in, hopefully, larger gatherings. We don't know when that's going to happen. We're hoping in the fall.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sue. And phase 1 starts when?
So one starts May 18th. We will be open for carryout. We're also going to incorporate curbside kits, which have been a huge home run for us. We beta tested it and have sold hundreds of pizza kits, and that's been fantastic. And then, of course, our guest rooms. They're open. We already have guests who have made reservations, and we've communicated with them, sharing our new practices and protocols of safety and sanitation. So we will be ready May 18th.
That's awesome. So exciting. And you don't know about phase 2?
We are patiently waiting for phase 2, and hopefully we will know more before or on, May 28th is the plan. So fingers crossed that we can get our restaurant open sooner than later, even if it's just a lower occupancy, and we, just kind of move into phases and steps with that.
Right. Awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Sue? You can type your name in the chat box. No, I don't see any. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sue. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. I know that you're extremely busy getting ready for all of this. Lots and lots of changes. But you guys, like I said, are leaders in the community, and we appreciate you joining us and outlining the steps that you're taking. Some really great ideas.
We will still, I always say, be hoteliers at heart. We might have masks on and we might not be able to hug or shake a hand, but we are still going to take great care of everyone. That's who we are. That's what it's all about.
That's exactly right. Customer service, right? Your clients come first. So thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen here. And I was just going to share with you a couple of fun ways that our business has addressed what's going on. And I'm going to hit play. There we go. So as some of you know, we own a very small seasonal ice cream shop in downtown Lake Orion called Cookies and Cream. And we were originally slated to open way back in January. We set our start date to reopen for the season as April 16th. Well, of course, the first week of March, everything changed quite drastically, and we weren't really sure what to do. We can be open because we are a food service business, but we were nervous about doing that in the middle of a pandemic. Thankfully, we got a lot of great encouragement from our local community and had a family that actually stepped up and did something really fun for us, which I'm going to share with you. So, but before that, the first thing, of course, that we did was we looked to our licensing agency, which is MDARD. We're licensed through the Michigan Department of Agriculture, not through the Oakland County Health Department. And that's because we also produce a frozen batter that we retail at some local stores in our space. And so the first thing we did was we looked to MDARD and what types of guidelines do they have that are governing food establishments that are allowed to be open during this time. So the number one thing that we did was looked up at michigan.gov, and I have it here in case anybody wants to go look at it. Their best practices for food establishments to manage COVID-19. The next thing that we did was we looked at the Oakland County Health Division, and their latest order is EO 2020-10. And we actually took almost all of our new procedures out of these two documents and are following them pretty much word for word. They're also posted in our establishment, so they're very visible. We went over all of them with our staff via a Zoom training before we opened. And we took our staff health screening that we are conducting right out of Oakland County's health screening that they provided to food establishments. So it's just a simple form, and it is required before our staff can enter our facility. I ask them these questions and they answer them. If they answer yes to any of the questions, then they're not allowed to come to work that day. So we have also, of course, implemented extra sanitization practices, including sanitizing our cell phones. Once we get in there, our staff is allowed to have their cell phones out in a specific area on a specific table, because we do not have a landline in the business. So, obviously they need access to their phone in case there is an emergency or they have a question. But we've gone over with them some really stringent sanitization procedures. And I even outlined for them in order. We have opening procedures and closing procedures for our business. And I have them all listed on a check sheet in order, and they have to initial each item as they do it. And they need to do them in that order, because that's what ensures that everything is being sanitized properly, and there's no cross-contamination going back and forth between sanitization processes. So this is what our business would normally look like. A line all the way down the sidewalk, and people certainly not 6 feet apart. So that was one of our biggest concerns, was how to keep people in line socially distanced. Well, I mentioned the wonderful family that came up with an idea. We have a giant Candyland game in our yard, and you can kind of see on the grass, it's a little bit hard to see in the pictures, but they painted for us on the grass a Candyland board game. And every other square has a number in it. It starts at 17 here at the start sign, and it counts down to 1. Right before you get up to our walk-up window. And every other square has a giant orange X in it. And so those are the squares that you can't stand in, and that keeps you 6 feet apart. We also played on this. This is the Candy Queen. This is the little girl who painted all the signs throughout our Candyland game, and she made this outfit and her little hat out of a cardboard box. And then what we decided to do was play on it and allow other kids to contribute to our Candyland game. So we've been handing out to kids these paper plates, and they can decorate them and bring them back, and then they'll get free ice cream. And then we add their decorations to our Candyland game. So it's been really fun, and the community has been extremely supportive. Very happy that we're open. We get thanked all day long for opening our business, for providing such a fun way that people could feel safe standing in line to get their ice cream. And this is just a picture of it without any people there, and some of the signs that we have. And then this is a picture of a large group of people that came, and we had them. We took a picture so we could show people how they stand along the Candyland game and keep their distance. So it's been really a fun way to maintain that social distancing out in line and reopen our business. And so I just wanted to share that it can be fun to socially distance. You can make it fun. And we're excited to be part of the community. And if anybody has any questions about any of the things that we've done as a small business, and I know Sue as well, feel free to email us if you didn't want to ask during the session. So we are happy to answer any questions that you might have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our main speaker, which is Brad Lambert with Lambert Law. I want to thank Brad profusely. I reached out to him as I was reading some of the governor's executive orders and had a lot of questions. about them, and needed the opinion of an attorney to help wind our way through these executive orders. And we knew that we wanted and needed to start to talk to you, all of our members, about those executive orders and what they mean for your business, and how you could begin to prepare to reopen your businesses. And so Brad was amazing and stepped right up to the plate and offered to help us do this webinar series, which we really appreciate. So Brad is going to discuss responsive legal measures, including how to write, maintain, and implement a compliant plan. So I am going to turn it over to you, Brad.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for those great presentations, both Susan and Alaina. That's really informative. And I think as we go forward, we're going to need to have the experience of what everybody else is out there doing, because this is so new to so many of us. Hopefully you would now see my, my presentation, which I will make available after today's session on our chamber website for Lambert Law, also our website for Lambert Law that we maintain individually, and hopefully Alaina can make it available also on the event page for this particular event. I'm hoping we can do that. Essentially, I am a lawyer who's been in practice since '82. I'm pretty much a longtime resident of Rochester Hills since 1980, but we've recently moved our office here to Rochester, and it's been just a terrific experience. Particularly with the chamber. Again, I'm really thankful for Alaina to have this opportunity to present this to you. And as with Susan and Alaina, if you have questions, if anything I'm saying is generating questions, I'm certainly happy to address them now, and I can tell you that we'll be addressing other questions in the next few weeks as well. This is essentially what we're going to be talking about today. The focus of my presentation is going to be on the first initial few days of opening your business, and how you're going to have to be ready for that event, and how you're going to be screening the employees as they come in, developing your preparedness response plan, and a couple other touches that you're seeing here as well, including I saw somebody ask a question about what I'm calling the cautious objectors who don't want to come back, and how we can start to address that, although that'll be a topic also for subsequent weeks. We're basically dealing with two separate executive orders from the governor. At my latest count, there's actually 81 of them now, many of which have been rescinded and replaced by successive orders. The two that we're dealing with today are the what I call the Work Policies Executive Order 36, dealing with the handling of employees in this pandemic, and then the latest stay-at-home order, which is Executive Order 77, which is now effective through May 28th, or any earlier revision by the governor. And because the Executive Order 77 incorporates the OSHA guidance that I've referenced there so directly, I'm also listing that. Your other general legal authorities you see on the screen, we're not going to deal with them so much directly today, but they are part of the presentation here in terms of how we're going to move forward when we're dealing with the pandemic and bringing employees back to work in what we hope to be safe mode. The first point of entry for bringing employees back is to be able to classify your business. There are 4 separate classifications. Today's presentation, and I'm anticipating the audience here, is going to focus on these 2 exposure risk categories: lower exposure risk and medium exposure risk. My belief is that the other 2 categories, which are mainly, and we'll deal with that in the next slide, going to be the healthcare facilities, nursing homes. They've already had their fill of this and are really on a separate track than those of us who will be opening businesses, which will be classified under these particular risk categories. The reason these risk categories are important is because it pretty much dictates how you will develop your PRP, your plan for reopening. And how you are categorized will dictate, based upon the guidances we have from OSHA and others, as to what measures you need to take. Sue and Alaina have both talked about some of the cleanliness measures, which Certainly it's not my area of expertise, so I'm not going to be dealing with that directly, other than to point out that you had better be attendant to that when you're running your business. As you can see in the differences between the two risk factors, the primary difference is the physical barriers, with the so-called engineering controls, which is the terminology they're using when they're in the OSHA guidance. Not many engineering controls, really none, are recommended for a lower exposure risk. Whereas when you get into the medium exposure risk, then you're dealing with much more liberal use of face masks and shields. Physical barriers, I would compare it to the grocery store. Many of us have already been to the grocery store in these strange times, and we've seen the physical barriers that are up between us and the grocery store clerks. I would categorize most grocery stores as a medium exposure risk facility, which needs to be doing that sort of thing. And as you can see in the slide, you may even need to consider more exotic PPE, such as gown, gloves, and goggles. In some cases, you really have to make your own assessment as to the nature of your business and whether you have to get into that. And I find one of the interesting areas here for the lower exposure risk, which I consider mostly to be an office type of environment where you have somebody has their own individual office. The members of the public would rarely come into it. At that point, you will see a lesser need for face masks, because the order specifically says the face mask has to be worn in quote unquote public places, which of course is a largely undefined term. I would say that a public place would not be a place where somebody individually is sitting in their own office and is perhaps seeing one or two customers, clients, whomever, once or twice a day. That really would not be what I would consider to be a public place. To the extent you can do so, if you can have customers go to a conference room or other general facility rather than your office, then that's your safest practice, your best practice, if you will. But I do not believe it's necessary if it's not a frequent thing. If it's a steady stream of customers, such as a bank, then yes, you'd have to consider the fact that you'll need to wear face masks and classify your particular areas as public places. Now we're moving on to, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here on the high or very high risk, and I love the fact we don't call it extreme risk, but it's the very high risk areas. They're pretty much the same, and you can see here on the slide the type of measures that are recommended, engineering controls and all the rest, that really will be foreign to most of us in terms of opening our businesses. And unless I get questions on that, we can reserve that for later weeks. Again, I will not be spending a whole lot of time on these particular risk classifications or how to develop a plan for them. Now we're moving to one of the most critical stages, and Alaina beautifully previewed it with respect to how to get an employee into the place of business, and that is what do you have to do to screen the employee? This is the three questions, and this is pretty much a one-size-fits-all recommendation. You don't find that a whole lot in the law, but here, these three questions are paramount. You can express them in different ways. I've seen forms where it's expressed where you actually have fever as an individual entry, yes, no, cough as an individual entry, yes, no, or you can do it much like Alaina did, which just said it's up to the employee to kind of discern if any of those, one or more of those symptoms are being shown, and then they would have to answer yes as to those, leaving it to the employer to perhaps probe further if that's what they think they need to do. Now, one of the interesting aspects of EO 2020-36, which is the principal executive order which governs this type of questioning, is only these three that are listed beside EO 2020-36, only these three symptoms are actually listed as principal symptoms that you can evolve into. But I'm confident that employers can ask about the other symptoms which are listed above, because the OSHA and even the EEOC guidances are allowing those to be considered symptoms of COVID-19. I know we have more exotic forms such as COVID toes. We've been seeing it. I would not be getting into that until we get more official guidance from the authorities. Now, I do want to note that touchless thermometers, and you're going to be getting more of that in a big way from Matthew later on, touchless thermometers, basically the guidance and the EO says use them if available. Well, as far as I know, they're available. I really heavily recommend that businesses do use a touchless thermometer with respect to their employees entering the workplace and screening them, because that is going to be an essential part of determining whether you're at risk and they're at risk. And in that process, to the extent that you can, do the best you can to keep the sequence and the process private, because most of you will not be directly subject to HIPAA as a provider, but you will be subject to HIPAA in general if you're out there just publicizing people's health conditions. So the safest practice is when you take a form like Alaina showed you earlier, just have the employees silently fill it out. There's no need for discussion if it's no, no, no. And then, again, the best practice would be to put it away in a manila folder or some other place so that the next employee coming through can't start thumbing through it and saying, oh, how is that person doing? You know, you really do not want to have that information readily available as people come into the facility. If there is a need to ask questions, that's where spacing, to the extent you can do it. Again, you can only accommodate to the extent that your space allows it. But if you can accommodate that people will be further away and you can ask the questions you need to ask to probe further into the disclosures the employee is giving you, then you do so, and you try to do that as privately as you can without revealing the employee's information. Because I am most concerned for employers who get into names when they're talking about somebody. I mean, literally the guidances I've been seeing and some of the advisories I've been seeing say that, okay, when you do run into an employee who has COVID-19, you literally should stay away from naming that employee. Now that's going to seem pretty silly when you have like a 5 or 6 person business and everybody knows that employee 5 is gone. But nonetheless, to the extent you can do it, you should do that. That is your best practice and safest practice. And you should note that the daily screening is not applicable to customers, clients, or suppliers. That's a whole different topic. And these procedures are not directly applicable, although you can obviously gain consent through recorded means before you would undertake anything like a thermometer testing or other testing of a customer or a client when they enter the facility. Now this is the employee disclaimer, which you will not find this particular document or procedure on any of the governor's executive orders. But essentially, we're under an unusual legal regimen here dealing with executive orders, but it's still part of the American legal system. In the American legal system, that which is not prohibited is permitted. So I've pretty much borrowed this from my good friend James Feeney, who has been kind enough to show me what they're doing for house showings. And you're doing a similar thing here when you bring an employee into your business as you are when you're having a house showing and you're bringing the buyer in to show the house. What they're doing industry-wide in that case is they're having a disclaimer which has these points included. And where I'm drawing the line is I'm not getting a hold harmless from the employee. I'm not recommending that for a lot of reasons, among which you probably couldn't get a hold harmless because of the workers' compensation laws. You can't have somebody hold harmless against something that might be covered by a workers' compensation claim as a COVID-19 infection could potentially be. So these 3 points, and I won't read them, but you can, I think it's very important to have the acknowledgement from the employee because there's potential for a misunderstanding here. We can all say, well, this is really Captain Obvious, but there is a potential that, oh, if you're opening your business and I'm coming in, then it must be perfectly safe. Well, I think it really behooves you to have a statement from the employee where they acknowledge, no, it's not perfectly safe. It's just that we do have a serious health threat and we're taking the proper precautions to address that. Does not mean that you're absolutely guaranteed not to contract this particular infectious disease. And I do note, as I stated before, that this form is neither mandated or prohibited by the executive orders. So it's just a practice that you may want to take up, not only with respect to the employees, but then also with respect to others that are entering the building. Because you do have a separate form of liability as the possessor of real estate or even owner of real estate, And in many cases, a lot of the businesses are owners and possessors of the real estate they're in. And I also know at the bottom, again, it's derived from the house showing, but it's also pretty similar to the at-will disclaimers that we're all very familiar with in our employee handbooks. It's a similar sort of procedure. Now, we're getting to the COVID-19 preparedness and response plan. And the first question I believe an employer has to ask with respect to bringing any employee on site is, can this employee work remotely? That should be at the top of your list, because if the employee can, then it's really, again, a best practice to retain that and perhaps bring them in once or twice a week if that is better facilitating of the employee's workload and the way the employee works. And then, of course, you'll have certain employees where that's not even possible. Again, I'll use the grocery store clerks, the clerks behind the Sanders counters. They can't do what they do remotely. There are just certain individuals that cannot work remotely, and you're going to have to bring them in. This gets to another related question in the second bullet point, and that is restricting the number of workers. I'm going to pick on the grocery clerks again and say, you know, do you need all 7 grocery clerks, or can you get by with 5? That is the question that you're being required to ask in the Governor's Order 2020-77. And even staggering them, having them come in at different times, you really have to pay attention to that particular guidance in terms of getting the proper numbers in there. I really encourage that you designate somebody and make it very clear on your postings and on any informational pamphlets that you're getting out to your employees, that you've designated somebody as the go-to person. And, you know, trust your instincts. You're going to know who that person should be. So you really should have a point person on this, so as to avoid confusion, because there's a lot of information going around here, and there could be a lot of mixed signals if it's not being handled by a point person, the quarterback, if you will. Then distribution, again, the posting is a great idea. If you are an email-heavy type company that uses that a lot, I would email that and updates out to all the employees, and even have a pamphlet available as they come check in that they can pick up in paper form. The more the merrier, frankly, on making sure that your then current form of your preparedness plan is distributed. And if you want to do your own research on this, I listed the paragraphs which are the most prevalent for dealing with getting your prepared plan together in 1112 and paragraph 15 of EO 2020-77. Now here are the elements. We talked about the principles in terms of implementing a plan. Here are the elements that any plan, and again, we have very direct guidance from the government. This is literally out of paragraph 11 of EO 77 here. 6 feet social distancing to the maximum extent possible. And one thing I have found very curious in going back and forth between, I guess only a lawyer could love these kind of points, but one thing I found very curious is that the governor bounces back and forth between 6 feet and then the common distancing that is a close contact term, which is a term of art. It has become a term of art, really, with respect to how far somebody's got to stay apart. And there's a big difference between staying 6 feet apart from somebody and close contact. My understanding of close contact, as I read the authorities, is staying within 6 feet of somebody for up to 10 minutes. I'm not sure the governor will adopt that standard, and sometimes the governor has used the term close contact. Here, she does not. So you're going to have to be mindful of the fact that, yes, it's permissible for somebody to be within 6 feet of somebody else for a fleeting moment. That's virtually unavoidable in almost any workspace. What's not permissible is to be there for a sustained period of time, which is literally pretty close to the terminology that she's using. Again, the increased standards of facility cleaning and disinfectant. I think the nature of your business, certainly there should be a daily regimen, but the nature of your business is really going to make clear what you need to do, and looking at the OSHA and other guidances is your best bet in terms of getting the disinfectant, cleaning, and other provisions you need to take. And you must provide the PPE in accordance with the CDC classifications. And that is Again, the mask in public places, as I've read the governor's orders, are mandated. Most of us will not need to do much more than the protective shields in terms of the PPE, but some of us will have to do the other measures I was discussing earlier with respect to the medium risk type of business. You need to have protocols for sharing the tools and equipment. You know, if you have a community keyboard, for example, in an office, then you better be very careful about that. That's not the norm, but facilities that are and equipment that is repeatedly used by people, obviously you have to have probably more than just a daily cleaning regimen. And then another question that comes up is whether a public space can become a private space and bounce back and forth. I think, believe it or not, we're going to actually be seeing something like that. I think for the most part, you need to treat a space consistently, but it is possible that you could have actually a space that has sort of a dual purpose, and it would not be unusual to have that and have to treat that space accordingly. Now, I've seen questions on the next slide as to the cautious, what I call the cautious objector. This is the person, for whatever reason, feels that regardless of the fact that they cannot answer any of the three questions in the affirmative, do not want to return to work. They've just, you know, let's face it, we've had a barrage of cautionary information about this disease for the last 2 months. It's going to affect different people differently. And what the governor has done to address this in Order 2020-36 is essentially she has triggered the public policy exception to the at-will doctrine, which applies to employment. And as we all know, Michigan is an at-will state. We're all employees at will unless we have a contract to the contrary, stating a specific term and specific events which have to occur before the employee can be disciplined or terminated. Well, her order, as you see here in the bullet point, applies regardless of the number of employees, and indicates that the two tests, not the travel tests, interestingly enough, only the two tests, the close contact, and here again now, she's gone back to close contact. You notice the distinction. So now I believe the employer will be entitled to probe, okay, you had close contact with somebody, what do you mean? And to make sure there's no misunderstanding, oh, I brushed by Uncle Phil. Well, brushing by Uncle Phil is not going to qualify as close contact. I believe it is the employer's right to actually probe into that if that is being, particularly in the area of where somebody's claiming to have been exposed to somebody with COVID-19. I believe the employer, for the most part, is going to be able to observe themselves the first sub-bullet point, whether the person is testing positive. You're going to see, obviously, a raised temperature or other symptoms right in front of your eyes. And of course, this EO is applicable to those who would mostly fall under the high or very high risk. And I did want to highlight, just for illustrative purposes, there is a pending case out there right now. It's getting quite a bit of notoriety in legal circles. Essentially, the woman who worked for this business could pretty much handle all of her duties at home for telecommunicating. She was just ordering supplies, generic merchandise. She had no interaction with customers, and yet the business made her come into work. Well, that is now a pending case where the lawyer is, of course, citing this very EO that we're discussing on this slide as a violation of her rights as the employee and actually what has become the employee contract. And now this slide, as Alaina indicated, we're going to have 3 more weeks of this at least. This slide basically tells you the kind of things we're going to be discussing. We'll get into the cautious objector a lot more, particularly as to how much you can investigate the claims that the cautious objector cannot come to work. And then there's going to be plenty of updates. Much of what we say today could very well be greatly modified or even made obsolete. And then hopefully we'll be talking about some return to work requirements and what happens when you do return to work, and these other, and of course, ultimately the expiration or phase out of these requirements. A little bit about our firm. This is myself with my son, Dan Lambert. We are happily ensconced in our office normally in Rochester, and these are the practice areas we have. Personal injury is personal to Dan. He handles that. And both of us handle the other disciplines in our practice. So please feel free to use this as a resource. And as I mentioned, if you have questions generated by this, we can either deal with them now or even later. And finally, here's a bit of a bibliography for you as to some of the authorities that I was referencing today, and can give you at least a reference point so you can look it up for yourself to the extent that you want to work through these works. And that completes my presentation. Alaina, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Brad. Lots of, yes, I see some people clapping. Yeah, we could.
Oh, thank you.
Yay!
Thank you.
What a good idea. Yay! Oh, we really appreciate it. We know this is a lot to wade through. And as you pointed out, some of it's conflicting information or very vague information, different terminologies being used between different documents. It is very difficult to navigate. So we really appreciate your expertise. We do have a couple of questions in the chat box that I want to ask. And if anybody else has a question, please type your name in the chat box or type your question and we'll get it asked. So this question is, what are the liability concerns with bringing clients into our business? I am hearing about wrongful death suits against cruise lines, among others.
Well, happily, I think cruise lines are a particularly unique type of business where you really are captured and you really are going to be pretty certain that the infection would have taken place on the cruise ship. One challenge I see for any lawsuits of this sort going forward in a normal business setting is sort of analogous to the medical malpractice cases, where it's very difficult, not only because of the disclaimers, but it's very difficult to pin down exactly how and when the infection happened and whether it was a negligent or a reckless practice by the person who invited the person in. Obviously, I did touch upon this a little bit earlier as to one measure you can take. If you wish to be that cautious, you can actually have somebody coming in sign off a disclaimer or even do so by internet, by email, prior to the meeting. Okay, we're going to have a meeting next Tuesday. Here's my disclaimer that I need you to sign off before we do so. That's a bit extreme and it won't be everybody's cup of tea, but it's certainly one way you can handle it. But I will tell you that causation is a major issue when somebody's trying to say, you infected me. It's a difficult thing to prove, because the first question when somebody's being deposed in a case like that is going to be, well, where else were you during that 14-day period? And it's going to be the rare person that says, no, nope, it was just me at home and it was just me in that particular person's office. So yes, I'm not downplaying the risk. There is a risk, but it is something that can be handled, and it is going to be a difficult challenge for those who claim to have been infected.
Okay, thank you. I've had quite a few people say they would like access to the presentation, and we will definitely get this posted on our website. It'll be on the COVID-19 tab, the slides, along with the recording as well. So we'll get that up as soon as we can. Another question, we have people holding private events to sign a contract. Would you advise us to include a clause in their contract that we are not liable?
Private events, so they are, I guess I need to understand, that apparently they're catering the private events.
Yes, wedding showers, baby showers.
Yes, okay. Yes, I would definitely have a hold harmless in there for COVID-19 and even broader infectious diseases, since who knows how much this is going to mutate into other forms. That's the new normal, and I would definitely, it's a contractual relationship. It is not barred by any of the EOs I've reviewed, and I don't know that she could even bar that sort of practice, but thankfully it's a pretty open door for you to go ahead and have a clause in there, which would be a hold harmless, again along the line of James Feeney's format that they're using when they're doing house showings.
Mm-hmm. Good idea. I did write that down as well for my business, because I have not been doing that with my staff. So I think it is a good idea.
As I said, it's different for staff. Staff is, staff has workers' compensation. That's a different ballgame.
Right. Right, exactly, exactly. I did want to mention too that I know when you talked about masks and the different interpretations of when you have to wear a mask and when you don't have to wear a mask, it's been interesting at our ice cream shop. We've probably had 99% of the people who come don't have a mask on. Now we are outdoor. We only have a walk-up window. We do not have indoor seating. But I have observed that people feel much different when they're outside than when they're inside. So we do require our staff to wear masks inside at all times. And then when they bring an order out the door, they still, obviously have their mask on. I'm outside a lot. Just making sure, people understand where to stand, for the social distancing and that sort of thing. So I'm out there talking to a lot of people. And if they don't have a mask on and I'm standing 6 feet away, I take my mask off so I can breathe.
Yeah. There is that. Yes. That is
Yeah. I'm not a hat person, and I'm not a put anything on my,
Yes.
I hate my glasses in, but anyways, but if I go outside and I'm speaking with a client who has a mask on, I leave my mask on. So I am meeting them where they're at with their comfort level, right? I'm respecting what their comfort level is. So.
Yes, and again, I can only unfortunately deal with the rather dull and boring topic of the law on this, and that is what you're doing is more of a social convention. The EOs on this actually are limited to indoor spaces because everybody has recognized that outdoor spaces are a far cry from indoor spaces when it comes to this particular infectious disease. So the mask requirement only applies to the indoor public spaces, not to outdoor spaces.
Right, right.
I have a question about parking really quick. I've noticed at certain parks, there's cones in between alternating parking spots. Would you recommend that for businesses in town, or is there a thought behind that?
I think the thought behind that is probably caution. Again, using the close contact standard, I find it very difficult to imagine too many scenarios where people who are parked next to each other are going to spend anything like 10 minutes next to each other within 6 feet of each other. So I guess maybe it has something to do with the surfaces. They're concerned about the surfaces being touched by somebody as they're getting out of the car. They're touching the other person's car. I suppose that, to me, that's pretty remote. Personally, as you're probably guessing from what I'm saying, I do not find that to be necessary. It's a great caution, but to my mind, that's more of a social phenomenon or convention than a legal one in terms of limiting liability or being required.
Okay, thank you. We have another question. What do you recommend for vendors coming in to deliver items?
They should wear masks once they enter the store or the facility. I think that's particularly important with respect to for their sake, because they're going to so many different places. If the question is, do I have to put a sign out there telling them to do that? My short answer to that is probably not. You would just maintain a safe social distance when the vendors come in to deliver. Now, if it involves something more than, which I would guess it involves something more than just coming in, dropping it off just inside the front door. But if you're actually going back to a storage facility, then again, you have to sort of read and react. In that case, yes, a mask would be far more imperative than somebody who's just literally stepping inside the door, dropping the box off and leaving. I hope that's helpful.
One thing that we are doing at the hotel is we are limiting the days and times of deliveries. So we're mandating a whole different, so it's not, a wide open window, and shortening and tightening up that time frame.
That's a really good idea. And that's what we do at the ice cream shop. Our deliveries are all done during the day when we're not open.
Oh.
Sounds like good practice.
Yeah, another question. In a counseling private practice, we would be probably considered medium risk. I have 4 other counselors that rent space in the suite. Would you advise to use touchless thermometers for our clients coming in as well as our counselors? And also, how many of us should be in the suite at one time?
Okay, there's a little bit to unpack there. First of all, with the touchless thermometers, my advice would be to get the advance consent in a written form from the clients. And again, this can be done in the manner that I was discussing before. If you have the appointment set in advance, email is a perfectly acceptable way to have written records now. Matter of fact, it's sort of becoming the nom du jour in terms of how people go about it. But you could also do it in a sign-in form at the front desk, so that. And once you have that, then I would feel free to be able to use a touchless thermometer. I'd be a little concerned about using a touchless thermometer on a client who's not expressly consented. Yeah, I'm not here to say that it is, instant liability for under HIPAA or anything else, but it could become that very easily. So I would say your best practice would be to certainly have, because so much depends upon how you're classified with respect to HIPAA. I would certainly prefer to see some kind of advance consent from the clients, from the patients.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. So when going into a client's home, professional organizers should wear masks at all times then?
Yeah, I think that's the best practice. I guess I could imagine a scenario where if they're organizing the house and the people have been out of the house for 7 days, then there's no need. But that's going to be a pretty unusual circumstance. The further you are away from that, the more you should be wearing a mask, yes.
Okay. And we had someone comment, it's been interesting navigating all of this when they have businesses in 3 different states.
Yeah, that... We live in challenging times.
Yes, especially when every state has their own definition of how to deal with this.
Yes, indeed.
Here's one, since someone can be asymptomatic, should you not count on taking temperatures?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I think, but I'm going to take a shot at it this way. I think all you can do, again, we literally have a one-size-fits-all regimen here. You've got the 3 questions. And if all 3 questions are no, then you are entitled to rely upon the responses you got unless you have reason to believe that the employee is not being honest with you. In which case, and we'll be getting into this more in future weeks, you might be able to do some level of investigation into the employee's responses.
Right, and Brad and I talked about this a little bit yesterday in our practice session. We did talk about that. Suppose, they're telling us that we can be contagious with no symptoms. So relying on the temperature is a little bit, difficult, given that we could still be spreading the virus according to the research data that we're being told. So,
correct. But this is the format that's been set out. I hate to go all the way to calling it a safe harbor, but it's close. If you get this in writing and you get your records down and you keep your records in a nice, secure spot, you follow the protocol and you've pretty much put yourself in a safe harbor with respect to the practices that you followed. Because there are no guarantees. Certainly somebody could be in day 4 of having COVID-19 and they're showing no symptoms.
right. And I've got one more question. An outdoor wedding that is 10 people. Okay to proceed.
Thank God, somebody's having a wedding. That's great. Yeah, I would, I would say most likely. We have seen the number 10 applied very specifically to large gatherings. And again, with the safe practices, the social distancing practices being handled, and again, you are outdoors. I would encourage it as long as you follow, just take a quick look at what you got to do with respect to keeping people from having quote unquote close contact while the ceremony is going on.
I will share with you, we held a birthday party last night at our ice cream shop at Cookies and Cream, and everyone pre-ordered, and we pre-scooped and put lids on each dish of ice cream, and we brought it all outside, and people were 6 feet apart. Most people did have masks on. We had 4 people who just drove up to the curb, didn't get out. They had decorated their cars for the birthday girl, drove up to the curb, and we handed them their ice cream. But most people did get out of their cars and stood around on our Candyland game board and had a birthday party for this little girl. So it was joyous to see.
That is great. We need more of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly measures like the Candyland game board. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So I think that was the last question in the chat box, and we wanted to end at 12:15, so we're right on track. I think the big thing, before I turn it over to Matthew, the big thing is protecting your business, right? We want to protect our employees and keep them safe, and we want our clients to feel safe and be safe coming to our businesses. And I think if we're proceeding with those 3 things, proceeding along with following what the governor's executive orders are as best that we can decipher from them, then we can reopen our businesses in a safe way and help our community feel safe as well. So thank you so much, Brad, for your expertise. We are looking forward to learning more from you in the next 3 weeks. Stick with us every Tuesday at 11, and we will unpack more of these guidelines and help guide you through all of this. So it's my pleasure now to introduce Matthew Vizana. Many of you know him. He's been a longtime member of our chamber through a couple of different businesses, and he is with CCS Presentation Systems. So Matthew, take it away.
All right. So a hard act to follow there, Brad. Lots of stuff to dive into.
Most kind.
Again, Matthew Vizana, CCS Presentation Systems. We're actually a national audiovisual integration firm. My partner and I own the Michigan office. And as we talk about technology as a whole is really designed to support processes. So as Brad started to unfold, as you look at these return to work protocols and you look at instituting a particular process, there's a myriad of ripple effects that then those things cause, and you really have to take a look at it. And it's the same thing with technology. So we have a number of different technologies that really come into play when you start to look at a facility and all the areas of a facility that may have implications for both staff and customers. As Susan had talked about, a lot of different things to look at in large facilities. So whether it's a small office or an enterprise environment, there are technologies that fit into a number of different spaces. So as we go forward here in the next few weeks, we can talk more in depth about those, but the one that seems to be, for us, getting the most traction and we're getting asked about the relevancy is our no-touch temperature check tablets. So if we can, we'll jump into just a few screens here and I'll highlight some of that, and then we can take questions at the end. So again, about CCS, founded in 1991. We are a national integration firm, so in addition to the Michigan office, We do have coverage throughout the United States. So any enterprise clients or national footprints, we do have the availability to support that. So a couple different manufacturers that we represent, Torii no-touch temperature check tablets. What most of these systems will do for your employees as you bring people into the facility, anywhere from a 1 to 3 feet distance, and they can take a temperature inside of 1 second with some of the manufacturers. So 1 to 4 seconds is pretty typical. In different size tablets, you can also, as we talk about the HIPAA requirements, you can set these up so that it is only viewable in a secondary location. These do have network capabilities, so you can monitor multiple entrances or exits as well as you bring people in. Really designed to be that first line of defense. And as I tell all of our clients when we start talking about technology, once again, it's designed to support whatever protocols you have in place, not an end-all, do-all. It's an additional supplement to it. So if I can identify that we have somebody that has a temperature and then quickly move them to that next step in our defined process of what we're going to do, you know, that's really where the technology comes into play for you. So Torii no-touch tablets. We also have a Good View dynamic detection display, and these will come in sizes from 8-inch tablets, 10-inch, 15-inch, and up to 21-inch tablets. So depending upon the area and what you're trying to accomplish, there was a chat note from somebody asking about the restaurant industry. A number of the restaurants have reached out to us, in addition fitness facilities, and asking for the larger templates. So one, that it grabs attention up front. They can also use it from a digital signage standpoint as well. And these fit into a lot of different spaces. So we support you know, corporate, education, medical, the healthcare industries, restaurant and hospitality, retail environments. So this technology, as well as the other ones that we support, really play across all of those arenas. I would, as Brad indicated, you know, we communicate back that really take a look at technology as an add-on and make sure that it fits in with what you're trying to accomplish in your business environment. Obviously, take a look at all of the legal ramifications as to where those are positioned, but a number of our clients have given feedback from an investment standpoint and said, look, it's worth it to put our employees at ease, let them know that we're taking all of the appropriate steps to mitigate those risks. So that in and of itself is why a lot of companies are going down the path with the no-touch temperature check tablets. If you walk into an environment and you have to have somebody else get close and take somebody's temperature, you're putting that person possibly at risk. So in the no-touch environment, I can walk up, have a screen remotely, and very safely capture that data so we can do, you know, whatever next steps are with it. And if you want any more information in regards to any of the tablets, we have a myriad of that, and we're happy to talk through from a consultative approach and just talk about technology in a workspace, whether that's access control or security cameras, virtual assistants for lobbies, digital signage. There's going to be a lot of need to communicate messages effectively and quickly, so digital signage is really coming into play as well too. So just a brief highlight of some of the things that we'll talk about as we go forward in our future presentations.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Does anybody have any questions for Matthew? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Again, huge thanks to Sue Keels for being our guest speaker today and talking about the Royal Park Hotel and all of the great things that you're putting in place to start to reopen. We're really excited. It gives everybody hope. That's for sure when we see a business such as yours planning to reopen. And thank you again to Brad for all of your expertise in helping to lead us through some confusing times and confusing orders. We look forward to hearing from you in the following 3 weeks to help us address even more questions as things continue to change, obviously. And thank you, Matthew, as well, for speaking about the touchless temperature tablets. Certainly something that can be extremely beneficial as many businesses start to reopen. And we help people feel comfortable and safe in getting back out again and living life again. So thanks again, everyone. That concludes our webinar for today. Hope you will join us again next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Same time, same place. Have a great day.
Appreciate it.